You ever think about what people did for fun like way before video games or streaming? Well, for a couple hundred years, one of the absolute coolest pieces of tech you could have in your house was a harpsichord. Seriously, so today we're going to pop the hood on this musical time machine and figure out exactly what made it tick.
Okay, get this. What if I told you that this thing right here was basically the high-end gaming keyboard of the 1600s? Yeah, no RGB lighting, no satisfyingly clicky mechanical switches, but this was the absolute cutting-edge way to make music. So how did this old-school controller even work? All right, first things first, let's look under the hood and check out the basic parts. You can almost think of it like building a custom PC. You've got a case, you've got your interface, and then all the internal parts that do the real work. So you've got the case, which is kind of like the computer tower that holds everything together. The manuals, that's just a fancy word for the keyboards you play on. Then you have the strings, which are made of metal and stretched super tight. That's what makes the sound. And finally, the soundboard. Think of that as the instrument's built-in speaker. Seems pretty simple, right? But the real magic is how all these parts work together. Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. See, you're probably familiar with a piano, right? It's got these little hammers that hit the strings. But the harpsichord, nope, no hammers at all. Instead, it has this totally different, super clever system. Basically, a tiny plucking machine for every single key. So the secret weapon, the heart of this whole machine, is this tiny little part called a plectrum. And really, all it is a built-in automatic guitar pick. There's one for every single string. Back in the day, they were often made from bird quills. Crazy, right? Now they're usually plastic, but the idea is exactly the same. This one little piece does all the plucking. Okay, so check this out. Here's how it all happens. You press the key, right? That acts like a lever and pushes up this little wooden stick called a jack. Attached to that jack is our plectrum. As the jack goes up, the plectrum catches the string and plucks it. Then when you let go, the whole thing just drops back down. It's like you have a whole army of tiny robot guitarists inside, one for every single note, just waiting for your command. But wait, what happens when you let go of the key? I mean, you don't want the note to just ring out forever, right? It would just turn into a big, blurry mess of sound. Well, that's where the damper comes in. It's just a small piece of felt that sits on the string. When you let go of the key, the jack falls back down and the damper lands on the string, instantly stopping the vibration. It's literally the mute button for each individual note. All right, so let's think about this for a second. You have a tiny little pick plucking a pretty thin metal string. That shouldn't be very loud, should it? So how on earth does this thing make a sound big enough to fill a giant room and a palace? Well, it's not magic. It's actually just some really clever physics. The answer is the soundboard. It's that huge, thin sheet of wood underneath all the strings. See, the tiny vibrations from one string travel down into this giant surface. The whole soundboard starts to vibrate, and because it's so big, it moves a ton of air. And more air movement means a way bigger sound. It's the exact same idea as the big cone in a speaker. Okay, so just like with any tech, you had your standard models, and then you had the pro-level stuff. These were the ones with all the special features that let expert players really level up and customize their sound. So what kind of upgrades are we talking about? Well, the really fancy ones had 2 keyboards, 2 manuals, so you could play 2 different sounds at the same time. And they had these levers called registers that acted like sound filters. You could flip a switch and engage a whole different set of strings to change the tone, making it brighter or softer. It was kind of like choosing a different sound profile or even a different skin for your music. For hundreds of years, the harpsichord was the undisputed king of keyboard instruments. It was the instrument. But then, a new challenger appeared, the piano. So what's the big deal? What's the main difference? Let's put them head-to-head in the ultimate keyboard showdown. All right, let's break down the specs. The harpsichord, as we know, plucks the string. This gives it that signature bright, clear vibe. But here's the catch. It only has one volume. It's basically on or off. The piano, on the other hand, strikes the string with a hammer. And that means you can control the volume. You can play super soft or you can play super loud. That ability to be dynamic, that was a total game changer. So if you remember one thing from all of this, let it be this. A harpsichord plucks its strings, kind of like a guitar. A piano strikes its strings with a hammer. That one single difference in how they work changes absolutely everything about how they sound and how you play them. Think about it. The harpsichord was the peak of music tech for more than 200 years, and then the piano just showed up and took its place. Kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? I mean, the electric guitars, the synthesizers, all the digital music software we love today, they feel like they'll be around forever. But what's the next big thing? What new tech is just around the corner waiting to completely change how we make music? What do you think is coming next?